roll call of who's. And I'm not repeating that again.
We need to read the,
Yeah, and that's what we're gonna do. I'm going to read a modified statement that says that I, as the chair, am waiving the requirement of a quorum at the physical location of the meeting. Obviously, we don't have a quorum here, and that's under New Hampshire RSA 91A:2-3B. Whereas in order to ensure an uninterrupted flow of federal transportation funding to the region, Stratford MPO must act on items specified in the agenda, and that's time constrained. Whereas I, as the chair, have decided that immediate action is imperative. The physical presence of a quorum is not reasonably practical within the time period requiring action due to the ongoing pandemic. Whereas I have determined that the situation constitutes a quote emergency unquote per RSA 91A:2 Roman 2. Therefore, the Stratford MPO TAC will invoke this emergency provision and waive requirement for a quorum at the physical location of the meeting. And now we'll do a roll call. Starting with me, Bruce Woodruff, Milton.
Michael Williams, Coast.
Michelle Mears, Summersworth. Nancy O'Connor, SRPC. Oh, we just go.
You may have to call their name and just say a little bit here.
Okay, Karen,
Here.
Katrine,
Here, Lee.
I'm
Dana?
here.
Tim,
Yes, good morning.
Donna,
Morning.
Donna, Shanna, Jill.
Here.
You said you're here. Dawn,
Here.
Rachel,
Good morning, Rachel Dewey, SRPC.
Susanna,
Susie Duffy, SRPC.
Linda,
Good morning, Linda, DOT.
Jackson,
Hi, Jackson Rand, SRPC.
and Colin.
Morning all, Colin here.
I think I got skipped. Sylvia, SRPC.
All right, I think that's good for introductions, staff communications. Would that be you, Colin?
Or anyone. I think it is official at this point that Elena Rogers has resigned from SRPC to kind of be with her family. So we are definitely going to miss her and her efforts on kind of our environmental planning. She did a lot in Dover and a few other communities. So she's still going to be in Somersworth, and we look forward to keeping in touch with her. But she's taking care of her little 6-month-old and being an awesome mom. So we'll hear from her again soon.
That's important.
Yeah, I'm with mine this morning, so that's why I'm not at the office. Yeah, I think that's it. If anyone else, yep. Unless anyone else can think of anything, I think that's pretty much it.
Okay, so we're going to move on to item 3, action items. The first thing to look at, I guess, are the minutes from February 4th. They should be in your packet. Take a moment, take a look. Let me know if you have any changes and what you want to do about the minutes.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes.
A second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Anybody have any comments on these minutes or changes? Hearing none, I will call the vote. I assume it has to be a roll call?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
Karen,
Abstain.
Katrine,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Shanna,
Yes.
Anna,
Abstain.
Jill, Jill,
She's from Dover as well, so it may be in sort of abstention as well.
Lee,
I'm
She's not
non-voting.
voting.
Dawn,
Abstain.
Linda,
Abstain.
and that's it. Thank you. Did we get everyone?
No.
Sorry.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. I think we made it for, all right. So the minutes are approved. We're going to go on to the discussion items. I think that's probably the most important reason for the meeting here today. This is item 4. So the first one, I believe, is Colin. This is an update to the Title VI plan, and you have it in your packet, I think.
Colin just sent it out yesterday. I'm actually gonna take this piece. I'll take my mask off so you can hear me.
Okay.
So the Title VI plan or program, our non-discrimination environmental justice plan is required for federal compliance with basically the 1964 Civil Rights Act. It is just something that we are required to do. And it is, as we call it, a pretty box checky. It's a lot of just like regulations. However, we wanted to take this opportunity. It hasn't been updated since 2013. So we wanted to take this opportunity to sort of just give it a good overhaul and make it more inclusive. A lot of it is language that's just required to be in there, but I think the main sort of gist of what we've taken with this approach is to be more proactive in our outreach to people. So as opposed to just saying, well, we left a copy of the plan in the library and no one said anything, or sort of not that sort of passive, we put the information out there, did someone take it or not, but to be more proactive in really like reaching communities, reaching populations that are protected, that are underserved, and also that are not traditionally involved in the planning process, transportation planning process. So a couple of the things that I just wanted to concentrate on today for your feedback. On page 5, we've sort of redone our goal and our objectives. I want to look at that language and see if you feel it is inclusive enough, broad enough, and also proactive. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it yet, or you want to look at it now. Any feedback is appreciated.
And just a note, this is Colin, that the scheduled kind of final approval of this is in July. Then there will be it requires a 45-day public comment period, I believe. So I know I just sent it out yesterday with not a whole lot of time to look at it. So this won't be the last time to review it. But we wanted at least your input on those 2 sections that I highlighted.
Do you want me to put that up on the screen? What
Oh, yeah,
pages?
sorry.
What pages is
Yes,
that?
please. 5 and 6.
So the TAC looked at this last fall.
We did have a
Last
discussion
fall.
about
I probably was just beginning to draft the outline at that point.
Right, okay. I have a comment. This is Bruce. Under the 6th bullet under objectives. Second sentence. I guess I'm suggesting that we change the word could to will or shall. It leaves it a little loose,
Meaning-
whether you're going to do it or not, when you say could use or could include the website, the social media platform. I like the word will or shall better.
The only thing
Basically,
that
do you want us? Sorry, go ahead.
the only thing that would do is potentially obligate you to, for example, take out a radio ad and do a mailing for every aspect of the planning process, if you're saying will. So it might be worth kind of breaking down types of outreach and saying, for these types of outreach, we will. And then other types that maybe don't justify a radio ad, certain types of steps.
I think that was why we used the word could, is because it was sort of giving the range of things that may apply to different situations.
But I think you're right that it's meaningless to just say could and then never do it.
Right.
And on these objectives, I feel like they certainly cover a good process. It's implementing them that's the challenge.
That's right.
So it sounds like, Bruce, maybe you're wanting us to identify some more, like, identify the specific outreach tools we will use depending on the context, maybe? So it's not like we will do all things every time we do anything, and the opposite being we could do these things, but we don't know if. So are you?
I guess I'm suggesting that we use the word will, which is not an imperative like shall, and then at the end, say as appropriate. And that might cover it. I don't know. Will is better than shall when it comes to what the point you're making.
Okay. But we need something a little stronger than could, definitely. I'd agree with that.
Also, an idea kind of aligned with what Bruce is saying. We could do some kind of matrix, like if we're like, oh, we have a public notice, we have to share it in the newspaper. We're obviously going to put it on the website, on our social media, that kind of thing. So maybe something like that would be helpful.
I think further on in the our planning for equity and environmental justice, which begins on page 12, that sort of starts looking through the different options for different situations. So that might be covered there.
Oh yeah, that's true.
And that is kind of a matrix.
So we've already started being kind of specific, so maybe we can just improve the language in that bullet and reference the matrix or whatever it looks like in the future.
Good idea.
So I don't know if you all have access to some sort of public service type discount. I know radio ads and mailings can get very expensive very quickly. Have you done any sort of look at how many a year you might end up with if you followed this matrix and what the cost implications of those are?
So for like digital, we have subscriptions for like the communications that we do. And then additionally, we have to put it in the paper, and Colin, you probably have a good idea of what that entails.
We have at the least, we do a paper notice for every amendment to the tip, and we do at least, a tip update and a metro plan update once every 2 years. So Michael's right. It's extremely expensive just for the newspaper for one day for 6 square inches of text. So I personally don't know if we have kind of a full scale detailed cost estimate like that, but if we don't, that is a really good suggestion.
Yeah, and I don't need to hear it from you here. I just recommend, especially for the things you say you'll use radio for. I know at Coast we've used radio for advertising for open driving positions, and it's been pretty eye-opening. just how expensive it is. So before you promise it to the community, definitely know what it'll cost.
Good call.
Good point.
Can I speak on a new one? The one above it is, talks about the right people populations. And I think when there's a right people population, there's also a wrong, and I don't know who that would be. So maybe appropriate people, or I don't know what the right word is. That just sticks out to me.
All right, any other comments on the goal or objectives?
I think it's pretty comprehensive.
So then on the next page is our, on page 6B, notification procedures for Title 6 beneficiaries. This is sort of the language that's on all of our agendas. That says reasonable accommodations for people with disabilities are available upon request, include a detailed description of the accommodation you require with along with the contact information. I would like to change this language for everywhere we use this, because I think it's not just people with disabilities. I think that's a very limiting term.
You're probably required to say disabilities, but you could probably say or others, or you could probably add language to broaden it, but I think at least I know under the rules posted under, we have to specify people with disabilities for reasonable accommodation. That's a legal term under Title VI.
Okay.
But I certainly think that if someone without a disability asks for an accommodation, it would make sense to try to accommodate.
Right.
And
Like needing a translator is not a disability.
right.
Yeah. Like, or there's other things and things that are. So I just want to think about how to add in those other.
Or other issues.
Challenges to access, maybe?
If language is one that we anticipate, you might just proactively explain how we would handle translation issues so that they know, oh, they've thought of it and I'm not making a request that is going to be tricky, that they've already have a solution in place.
Right. The other thing I was thinking was for just our standard language, that we can have this also in Spanish and Indonesian. Just on here, proactively. Why not, right? Any other comments from anyone on that?
No.
So there's a whole document, there's lots more information in there. Feel free over the coming weeks or month or so to just get in touch with me if you have suggestions. We will be keeping on working on it. I'm drafting, but there is plenty, and I like your suggestions are great, so.
So one question before we leave this, all the verbiage with regard to resolving Title VI complaints, this, I assume that this language on page 7 and 8 probably came right out of the manual or the guidance on this. It's standard language.
It is, yeah.
Okay. So there is no other action for the TAC to take on this.
Nope. Please review at your ease and just send any comments that you have to me.
Perfect.
And O'Connor.
In that case, if no one else has any other comments or questions on the.
Lee has his hand up.
Go ahead.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
hi.
Lee has his hand up.
Yeah, if I may, I just wanted to, thanks, Colin. Um, Thank Nancy for her work on this, and I just to let you guys know, I've shared the draft document with our civil rights program specialist, Wanda, and I'll let you know if she has any comments. And also just wanted to encourage you to also share it with NHDOT's Office of Federal Compliance, Larissa and her group. Maybe you've already done that. And one thing I know that, a comment that I would anticipate from Wanda, based on some of the MPO planning reviews that we've done previously or recently, I think a common comment from her is that the Title VI document, the Title VI plan, should be sort of a standalone document. And so one of the comments I guess I might anticipate from Wanda is that this document should sort of separate out the Title VI information from the environmental justice plan and public participation or whatever else might be included here that's really not so much focused on Title VI. So just as a heads up, I'm guessing that may be a comment we might be getting from Wanda. And also the last time we did an MPO planning review in Stratford, there might have been some comments in the report. So I'd encourage you to take a look at that if you haven't done that yet. And I'll probably do that too, just to see if we had anything to say, any recommendations based on the last review. But thanks again for revisiting it, and we'll look forward to providing comment if we have any. And it sounds like we'll have quite a bit of time to do that, based on what you said, Colin, about the final approval in July and then the 45-day comment period.
Thank you, Lee.
That's really helpful. I don't know if we looked at the review, so that's a really good idea to follow back on that.
Yes,
Can you repeat the name
yes,
of the
thank you
other?
for the reminder.
Sure.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you're fine. Can you repeat the other entity you said? It was like something compliance.
Yeah, it's the Office of Federal Compliance. It's in New Hampshire DOT's, basically their civil rights section. And Larissa, I can't remember, maybe Linda can help me.
Luann is the new Title VI coordinator.
Oh, okay, so you're aware. Okay, great. I wasn't
Yeah,
sure.
we're gonna-
Okay, great, thank you.
Right. I'm giving this a little pause so that anybody else out in Zoom land that wants to comment on this before we close up this item can do so now. All right, let's move on to discussion item 4B, which is the regional bike ped plan survey. I think that is Colin.
Sheena.
Yes, that's me. So Colin and I are working together to start our active transportation program here at SRPC. That involves putting together a plan and doing a lot of outreach to inform that plan. So one of the first steps we are planning to do is put together a survey. For the first time, we're looking into using MetroQuest, which some of you may be familiar with. Let me see if I can pull up the example that I have. I have a million things open. Okay, so this is MetroQuest. This is an example of a survey from the Southern Alleghenies Planning Commission in Pennsylvania, but it was a very good model for what we're looking to do because it's also a bicycle and pedestrian plan survey. We reached out to them and they were excited for us to use their survey and kind of adapt from there. So the way they had set up their questions were great. So we kind of used that as a basis and worked from there. I apologize. My phone is not on silent. So the way this works is there's different slides. So the idea is it's a little more interactive than a regular survey on SurveyMonkey that you just scroll through from question to question. The first slide would be an overview of what the survey is looking to accomplish and some additional information you can add down in this little scroll box here. And then you are able to work with 3 different slides before you wrap up. You can choose the themes of those slides. So we're going to use very similar ones. Standard survey, which is where you can put in your different survey questions and also put them by theme, which is interesting. So that's kind of helpful. And then a priority slide. So looking at prioritizing areas of active transportation and where money should be invested, something like that. And this last slide here is a map. You can put your home location, you can put your favorite areas to bike to walk to, any safety concerns you have. So that will give us information that we can also map and use in the plan, which will be a really good tool. And then the wrap up would be kind of the demographic questions. So we're going to be using that setup. And so if you were able to look at the draft survey that we sent out, that kind of explains how it's organized. That's that intro here that would be on that first slide. Those scrollers of a little bit of more information about why we're looking into active transportation. And then it's organized by those different areas. So the survey questions with the different topics. And then down to the priority slide that we looked at. And then the mapping is very similar to what they had. So I know Colin just sent this out yesterday, so I don't know if people were able to look it over. But basically we're looking for, are we missing anything with this survey? And something I'm very concerned about when I do surveys is not just asking a question to ask a question, but what is it going to tell us and how we're going to be able to take that information and then use it to write the plan or come up with implementation projects or things like that. So I'd love any feedback that anyone has. And if not today, you can forward along any input to my email.
I'll start.
Yes.
Mr. Bruce again, as with any survey that's presented over the internet on websites, you're almost targeting certain demographics and you're leaving out certain demographics. Does this survey lend itself to being printed out?
We would have to shift it a little bit, but we do print out all of our surveys. So it's equitable, like you said. Not everyone has access to a computer, or maybe people that are older don't use computers as much for this type of thing. So the only thing we probably wouldn't be able to do is the mapping part. But I think every other question, we would just have to format it a different way and print it out. I don't think we could do it right from this program, but that's a really good point.
So your plan would be to get this out to multiple agencies, towns, town websites, and the websites of places like CAP and and I'm not thinking of some others, but that full spectrum of public providers. My only suggestion would be to try and capture that other demographic that we're talking about is to have printed copies in a box at these places, and then another box where they can put it in through a slot when they're done filling it out.
Yep.
That would get the widest dissemination of the survey.
Definitely. Yep.
Comments, suggestions, anyone?
I have a question. How do you see this getting actually used and how quickly you might see it be used?
So I don't have the timeline in front of me. Colin, do you remember when the plan draft is?
Oliver turned off Colin's computer and he needs to be added back in.
Oh, okay.
Does not like technical.
Okay, I think that.
Awfully quiet.
So right now we're in the very early phases of this project. So yeah, I don't don't have the timeline right this second, but the idea is that we'd use this to inform priority projects that are going to be included in the plan. So looking at, what trails or what bike paths exist, what could be expanded. A good example right now is Farmington and Rochester have a meeting about the rail trail that runs from Rochester to Farmington and expanding that. So just identifying those priority projects, looking at potential funding sources for things like that and laying that all out, so that when those funding sources come available, we can say, oh, we have this project, it's listed in the plan, which always is helpful when applying for funding for those types of projects. So it's over I want to say it's over like the next year and a half that we're putting together this plan and publishing it.
So do you see it being more used for off-road situations?
So it's anything active transportation, which means like biking, walking, rollerblading, roller skating. So it could even be that downtowns support this type of activity with more like, I'm blanking on the word right now, but where you like dock your bike, or having even maybe like the scooters or the e-bikes or things like that. So it's not necessarily like off-road, it could also be downtowns as well.
Well, I meant, I guess you don't know until you get the results, but
Yeah.
What will happen with the transport, with roads and streets? That's more my question.
Okay, Colin, can you speak to that? Not
Yeah.
sure.
Sorry, I was out of touch for a couple minutes there. I have the timeline more or less in front of me here. Since I think there was a question about that. The plan was to distribute the survey in May, and have it open for a couple of months, compile results around July, and develop sort of potential focus areas and strategies from that, and then present the outreach results at TAC and Policy in August. And then sort of earlier in the fall, present draft focus areas and strategies at a TAC meeting. There is no specific focus, I think, as far as like on-road or off-road. There are lots of recreational opportunities out on the promoting outdoor play map. And I think in general, I think safety and accessibility are a concern. So we would be concerned with access to the recreation sites. So if people can get to them on their bike, or if they have to drive to them, and then safety for people on foot or on a bike or on other kind of non-motorized wheels in their communities. But if the question is, are we considering off-road, then yes, we would definitely get input on that. Sorry, that was long-winded. I missed this specific question.
Yeah, it was more making sure that state roads and town roads are part of the focus.
Definitely. Yes. Thank you, Tom. And I think Shanna's had her hand up as well.
Yeah, thank you. I just had a quick question. I know in the kind of about the format of the survey, in the beginning of the survey, you're very clear that I think you call it, sorry, I'm scrolling up here, active transportation. You say that that includes, bicycling, wheelchairs, rollerblades. I'm thinking about runners too, which use the facilities, the same facilities. Yet throughout the survey, in every question, you say biking and walking, biking and walking. And so I think you may lose some of those other modes of transportation, or whether people are using scooters or they're running or anything like that. They'll say, oh, that question doesn't pertain to me. So my thought is maybe to reword that a little bit to make it a little bit more inclusive, so you get the best well-rounded amount of information you can.
And I tap into that same thought. It's been a long time for me, but I used to wish I could push a stroller to the library. So strollers might be part of that mix.
Those are great suggestions. Thank you.
Non-vehicle forms of transportation.
Are there any other comments? Okay, if anyone has any extra time to look this over later or any additional comments, feel free to reach out to me at ssylvia@stratford.org. Thank you.
So have we done what is being asked of the TAP? They were asking us for specific feedback on recommendations for adding, subtracting, or revising questions in the survey. And also they were looking for recommendations for people or agencies to distribute the survey. I think I started out that discussion. Does anyone else have any comments or suggestions? All right. Thank you. That's a good suggestion. I think we're ready to
Sorry,
go
that's
on
all for
to.
me.
I think we're ready to go on to discussion item 4C. This is a preview of the electric vehicle charging strategy. You also have a double-sided page in your packet. And who's gonna talk about this one?
That's Zuzi, and I'm sorry, I printed out that draft questionnaire and forgot that we hadn't put it in the packet. So we'll follow up with this after. But Zuzi, do you want to start us off, and we can kind of tag team it?
Do you want me to, is that somewhere for me to put on the screen, or you just want to talk about it?
Sure. Yes, please. Yeah, it's on Nancy's computer there at the office though.
Okay, she should be able to share her screen as well, but I don't know if she has it ready or handy.
Yeah, I can't do it from my computer. Can you access it from the server, please? I can send you the location of it.
Okay.
I thought we had this up already this morning, Colin.
It's a Word doc. It's not a PDF.
It's
Oh,
not.
are
this.
we not talking about the PowerPoint presentation that I created?
Oh, yes, that too. Nancy, there's a PowerPoint ready to go on the computer there.
Yep.
It was minimized.
You can just share the screen
No.
for them to see it.
Apologies to everyone about the technology this morning. I've not done this before, so.
Yeah,
There
sorry,
it is.
everything is crazy this morning.
No problem.
Can everybody see this now? Yep.
Yes, can you
Yes.
hit,
Yes.
if you put it in present mode there and then just click through for me? I'll take us through.
Probably like can't see
Yeah.
the screen.
Sorry, the TV's in the way.
Just present this.
It's at the bottom, kind of like right middle.
This. I guess the screen thing. Look,
I'm sure either, so.
it's this.
Yes.
Yeah, so it shows it on the TV.
Oh, okay. If you go up to the top, there should be like presenter options or view options. Maybe just do duplicate screen, or if you can't figure it out, if people can see this, I mean, there isn't too much text and I can walk people through it. Technology is just against us this morning.
You guys can see the,
It may have the screens flipped. Here, let me try something else. Just batting 1,000 this morning. Stand by. I can do it from here. Why don't we just do that?
Does that work?
Okay, perfect. Cool. Okay. Okay, I may get interrupted by Oliver here, but Zuzi and I and Jackson are kind of tackling the electric vehicle charging infrastructure funding that is coming through the bipartisan infrastructure law. Can you scoot forward, or next slide, please? This is going to be the first phase of it is through the NEVI program, or National Electric Vehicle Charging Infrastructure Program. $17 million are coming to New Hampshire through the BIL to expand the state's EV network. Part of that will be through the NEVI program, which is like a state facilitated process, and there will be 2 discretionary programs for corridors and community level charging coming as well. Those are still in development. Next slide. So this first phase is focused on the currently designated corridors around the state. We have 2 in our region, New Hampshire 16 and US 4. They are currently designated as corridor pending. Oh, Oliver, that's so loud. Come on. They're designated as corridor pending, and this first phase is going to be focused on new fast charging along these designated corridors. The state, in this case, New Hampshire DOT, is going to be developing a statewide plan. And I'll talk about that more in the future and then on the next slide. But really, what we're focused on at SRPC here for this process is making sure that we as a region and municipalities are ready to take advantage of the funding when it comes forward. And you can see the dots on the screen on the map there. Those are the current charging stations in the region. There are yellow ones that are level 2, and there's another dot. They tell me that's red, but my color blindness is real bad on this map. That is, we have 1 fast charging at the Hilltop Chevy dealership in Somersworth that also has a level 2. So that's why it says fast charging and level 2 charging. Next slide, please. So what we're really going to be looking for, and we can take a look at the questionnaire after this. We're calling this a strategy, EV charging strategy that really focuses on potential sites. And so what we're going to be asking for, primarily municipal staff, I believe, but also our agency partners, is to identify locations where there is public parking for at least 4 parking spaces, and at properties that are municipally owned, or another site where permitting would likely not be a barrier. So like a large grocery store parking lot, or a state park and ride, and we'd have to coordinate with state DOT as well. But basically the kind of underlying question is, if the funding were available tomorrow, what sites could we get on board without having to go through a third party to do the permitting and so forth. That was kind of our initial thought with this. Next slide. So as I said, the corridors in our region 16 and 4 are quote unquote pending, meaning they don't match the standards in the current federal rules for the NEVI program. And what I mean by that is, so corridor ready, if a corridor is quote unquote ready, the rules were just updated, and that means DC fast charging stations every 50 miles at least, no more than 50 miles apart, and no more than 1 travel mile from the corridor at an exit. So if you're driving up 16 and there was a charging station at exit 9 at the Dover Park and Ride, that would qualify under this and perhaps make that corridor quote unquote ready. So we're going to be focused on getting our quote unquote pending corridors to that ready state. And there are a whole bunch of other additional requirements as far as the capacity of the chargers. There have to be 4 plugs. They have to be universally accessible under the CCS. So they can't be Tesla. That Tesla doesn't count because they're proprietary and in a private company and so forth. So all of those details are going to be written out in a plan that's being developed by DOT or led by DOT. That plan is due August 1st, Fed approval potentially by September 30th, according to the timeline. And so we are going to be compiling those sites in the meantime, and we have some tools that we can use to prioritize them based on, we can weight the different criteria in those tools according to tax recommendations. So we can look at vehicle miles traveled. We can look at nearby sites for economic development potential. The tool also includes some equity pieces regarding air quality, and I think they include the opportunity zones as well, the federal opportunity zones. So the 2 pieces coming up in the meantime for SRPC and for the TAC and policy are identifying and prioritizing those sites for future funding and developing some more specific feedback for DOT and other state agency partners as that plan is developed, as far as how recommendations from TAC and policy as far as how that funding might be prioritized in the NEVI program and the future discretionary programs. And when I say discretionary, I mean communities within New Hampshire can apply competitively for additional funding to install chargers in their communities or along additional corridors. I think that's the last slide. That was a bunch of information real quick. Shanna, do you have your hand up again, or is that from before? Okay, cool.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Just one thought. I think it's kind of a loss, I think, to our region not to have Route 11 as well, kind of one of those corridors. Just a thought. I know it captures a lot of commuters locally, but certainly a lot of tourist traffic, and brings it up to the Lakes region. So just that's one thought. The second thing I wanted to say is, interestingly, I think one thing that we need to maybe start thinking about moving forward is the commercialization of this as well. So here in Rochester, we actually have a proposal that we are looking at on Monday night before our planning board for a private entity to come in and actually build an EV charging station that looks a lot like a petroleum gas station, except the time to fuel is 15 to 20 minutes versus 5 minutes. So, you know, I think it would be great to be able to extend, you know, maybe some grant opportunities to these folks who I think at this point are kind of going out on a limb to see if this business model works. You know, and I don't know that it needs to be subsidized with grants for the long term, but really maybe to get a few folks foot in the door in order to kind of get this as an established use, maybe allow communities to revise their zoning ordinances to allow this type of use, which we kind of struggled with a little bit, and get this more as a accepted ubiquitous use in communities rather than kind of this specialty type of use. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Shanna. And I'll let Tim fill in some of the blanks because he's going to know more than me. But that's a really good point about the ordinance things and EV charging as a use, that probably that language hasn't been introduced necessarily. There is a new round of corridor designations, so that's perfect timing on your part as far as recommendations for new corridors. I will have to read into it a bit more. I believe we can make a proposal to DOT or DES, but ultimately I believe it's the state agencies. That's not true. NPOs can also nominate a corridor for designation. So I will find out more about that and how we can fill in the gaps between 16 and 4. So Tim, you had your hand up. Can you speak more eloquently than me?
Thanks, Colin. Yeah, I was just going to mention about the upcoming new round of corridor nominations that Federal Highways released along with the NEVI guidance. And we've been in contact with Federal Highways to ask them some questions about that. In terms of the next round of corridor nominations, they wanted us to focus on the interstates, but that's not to say that we cannot nominate additional corridors outside of the interstate system. But as Colin mentioned, well, we've collaborated with DOT on these corridor nominations. I think the first one we worked with them on was back in 2018. So we've done a couple with them, and we'll be working with them on this latest one. But Colin, we can talk offline about, you know, any suggestions for any corridors, and we will be meeting with the DOT about the NEVI program fairly soon, so we can pass these comments along to them as need be. So thank you. Thanks, Colin.
Thank you, Tim. Yes, I will definitely be following up because I was kind of looking preemptively at our corridors and trying to think of which ones might be nominatable. And 11 and 125 came to mind, and I know the federal guidance emphasizes state-to-state connections, so I wondered about connections to Maine. You know, 202 headed out of Rochester potentially. I know folks probably that's a commuter route to places like Pratt and Whitney and the coast and so forth. One other thing, and I see your hand up, Katrin, that we had a meeting yesterday, Wednesday, with Jessica Wilcox from DES to learn more about the federal rules and stuff, because DES has been meeting with Federal Highways. As I said, the rules changed as far as the corridor designations, what counted as corridor ready for EV. The round before this, it was fast charging stations no more than 50 miles apart, but they could be 5 travel miles from a highway exit. That switched to 1 mile from the highway exit on this round. But one of my big takeaways was that the current corridor designations will still be honored and will still be eligible for the NEVI funding So it's not, they moved the goalpost, but that didn't de-designate corridors as is. But the focus will still be on getting those corridors up to ready status and a focus on the interstates in the first round. Did I get that right, Tim? Pretty much.
That sounds about right to me, Colin. Yeah, I mean, the focus is supposed to be initially on the interstate corridors and other corridors, I guess, as needed in the national highway system. But the other thing I wanted to mention is that, Sheena, I will tell Jessica about the development proposal that you mentioned a minute ago, because I think she may be able to pass along to you some guidance with regards to maybe streamlining your permitting process to get that project going. So I will mention that to her.
That's great. Thank you.
Katrin, I want to get to you before I keep rambling.
No, I just wanted to say, I think it would be important for us to focus on intersections as well. So if we have corridors, that's important. But if you're focusing on when there's an intersection with another road, then you're now increasing, you've added to that whole extra area too. So I just think that would be a good place to put a priority.
Definitely. And the NEVI program is really focused on, it feels kind of like the long distance traveler. So it kind of makes sense for New Hampshire from attracting tourism standpoint. But the future discretionary programs will be, there is a community focused, so like community charging that might fit with what you're talking about with intersections. And I should have said at the beginning, the 17 million isn't just one big chunk in one go. This is distributed over the next 5 years. So as the interstates get built out, and achieve that quote unquote ready status, we're then able to focus on the next level down, New Hampshire 16 and 4, and then to 11 and so on and so forth. So it's sort of it feels like the funding and stuff is set up in a stepwise approach to kind of build up from the interstates.
I'm just thinking about like that 4-125. If you put it right at that intersection, happens to be in Lee, then you now add 125 to that 4. So it really makes a difference.
Definitely. And that's where New Hampshire DOT is building a park and ride. So that's a pretty good opportunity there. Thanks for that reminder. Any other, is there, I see a chat. Let me make sure that, that was from Shannon. She had to leave. So any other initial thoughts on this? This is all the new guidance from DOT is about 2 weeks old. So this is a developing process. And we have a couple of months, but it feels to me like we have just enough time to identify potential sites and get ready for the funding when it shows up. So if you have sites like Katrin, you were mentioning the US 4 and 125, those are great for us to look for nearby properties. If your community has kind of charging sites in the works, like Shannon was mentioning in Rochester, that's also really helpful for us to know, because we can plan around that, and that'll be critical for filling in the gaps.
And who should we send that information on those potential sites in each community to? You, Colin?
I guess to me and to Susie. But if you just send it to me or just to Susie, then we can share them. You probably have my email, so just send it to me and I'll coordinate.
Thank you.
And so we're finishing up the question in the room.
Yeah. When do you want those by, Colin?
Good question. How about this? Why don't I coordinate with Susie after the meeting and give you a specific date instead of me just trying to make one up, because we're finishing up the draft of a questionnaire that will include a request for any information for sites that aren't currently on the map, and we'll include that. And so I'll follow up with everyone with specific dates.
I have one question. I'm still not clear if it's the 1 mile or the 5 miles.
It's 1 mile.
Okay, thank you.
For a corridor to be quote unquote ready, meaning when a corridor is ready, my interpretation is that is kind of the end state, the ideal state for a corridor, to have direct current fast charging stations no more than 50 miles apart and no more than 1 travel mile from a highway exit. So that's kind of the gold standard. And so we're trying to get all of the corridors to that. And that's why they're starting with the interstate. So that's the requirement is 1 mile, no more than 1 mile from an exit. So we have so as an example, the New Hampshire 16 corridor is pending. There is a fast charging station at the Chevy dealership in Somersworth on 108. That is 1 mile as the crow flies from 16. But if you get off at exit 9 or exit 11, that is more than 1 mile from that exit. So that doesn't count.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other thoughts on this? All right. If we're ready, let's move on to other business. Under A, 10-year plan project solicitation.
That's me again. Just a note, I sent out the kind of formal project solicitation notice to all TAC and policy email recipients I have, and I've been having kind of more informal discussions with community staff and TAC and policy members over the past couple of months. That we always do a formal solicitation for projects, and I should have titled this Metro Plan Project Solicitation in the agenda, because really what we're soliciting for new projects to go into our Metro Plan, and many of those will be eligible for the 10-year plan or other funding programs like TAP or CMAQ. So it was really just a note. I'm going to keep contacting people and developing projects, and the one reminder I'll include is that if there are new projects in development that you want to submit, there is a form that was in my email, and that just gives us project information so that we can add it to our database. If you would like engineering support for a project, we have VHB on call, and I need to get them potential projects by the end of May. And all I need is a fairly well-defined scope, kind of what you want to do, and we can refine that, and then we can get an engineering cost estimate from them.
Thank you. Before we move on to item 6, citizens forum, I want to give the TAC members an opportunity to update us on either your community or your agency on anything you'd like to let everybody else know about. Use the raise your hand tool.
So our CMAQ grant, the city has begun easements discussions with property owners on High Street associated with the CMAQ grant. Construction is anticipated in spring of 2022. So based on New Hampshire DOT approvals and design plans. And our TAP grant is underway. Final plans will be submitted to NHDOT, and once this is complete, the right-of-way and utility certificates are approved, the project can be issued for bid. Construction is anticipated in spring or summer of 2022.
I'll go next, coming up very soon here, I think next week. The citizens in Milton will be voting on creating, whether to create a gateway business overlay district. That specifically, one of the allowed uses are electric vehicle recharging stations. Well, that's pretty important in Milton. Anyone else?
If there's no one else, I'll just throw in a reminder since people are talking about CMAQ and TAP. If you're unfamiliar, the Congestion Mitigation Air Quality Improvement Program, or CMAQ, and Transportation Alternatives, or TAP, DOT facilitates funding rounds for those programs in alternating years. So TAP was in 2021. So I have heard word essentially through the grapevine from DOT that there is a CMAQ round coming up later this fall or near the end of the year. That I can't confirm that, but it is a round, it is a year for congestion mitigation. And the BIL includes quite a boost in funding for both of those programs. I don't know how that will affect the funding solicitations from DOT, but it could make more funding available and allow more projects to be built. If you have questions about those programs or project ideas, please contact me ASAP. If it's a CMAQ project, we need to do air quality analyses, and sometimes that requires traffic counts or traffic analysis. And now is a great time to do that when we're planning the traffic count season for this coming year. So I'll send out information on that when I get it. But now is a good time to start building projects.
Thank you. Anyone else? We're going to move on to citizens forum. There are no citizens that are physically here. I don't know if there's any citizens out there in Zoom land.
We don't have anyone that's not in the room. So unless there's any citizens that are panelists right now, we are good.
Okay. So that takes us to item 7 on the agenda. I'm looking for a motion.
Second.
All those in favor? The Zoom room. All right, thank you.
Thank you all. Sorry about the scramble this morning. Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you for your patience with our technology, and everyone have a great weekend.
Thank you, Shannon.